What makes a good villain in JoJo? Style, charisma, eccentricity, power? All of the above are good, but what makes a better villain? Enrico Pucci, the villain of JoJo Part 6 Stone Ocean, is an amazing character. The first villain in JoJo that stands out as one of the most layered and thematically rich villains in the entire JoJo franchise. Looking at his character, even if most of it is done through reading between the lines from Part 1 to Part 5, many JoJo villains are defined by a single core idea or moment. Dio's greed and ambitions, or Car's arrogance over life. And the problem with most of these villains in these parts is that once these ideas are established, the villains become static or one-dimensional. That core moment or idea is the entirety of their character, sometimes becoming caricatures of a villain. Though rare, there will be some villains to the protagonist that have some potential to be something more. They are never the main dish, just the appetizer. Though I get it. Sometimes you just want a villain that's evil for the sake of being evil and don't really need a complex backstory or goal to them, as long as they're charming, strong, smart, and just look cool. A good villain has to be memorable, iconic, and a powerful threat. Though, to be fair, the main characters of JoJo have the same problem of being one note, as long as they check those boxes at least up until Part 7. The last villain in JoJo had a connection to the main character spiritually or emotionally. It was Dio Brando from Part 1, Phantom Blood. But deep down, it was nothing more than a sibling rivalry. There could be an argument for Part 2 villains, the Stone Man, as the JoJo of this part, Joseph Joestar, is fighting against the origin of the family curse, if you look at it from that angle. But there's no real connection between them and the main character, because the connection was with the side character, the main character's best friend, Caesar. While Pucci and Jolene start off with having somewhat of the same problem, the connection between Pucci and Jolene is a bit weird, but also special. It's special as he is the link to both MCs, Jolene and Jotaro Kujo. But it's also weird because as both for his own personal reasons and because he is the spiritual successor to Dio Brando. It's like a generational curse for the main family of JoJo to face off against Dio and his spawns or minions. And sometimes Part 6, Pucci felt like he was fighting against Jotaro through Jolene, at least symbolically. But this weird menage a trois.
What did you say? Omelette de fromage? Oh, Dexter, Dexter! French is the language of love.
The connection between Pucci and the two JoJos from the past and the present makes him special, showing he has more layers to him than just being evil. And through his backstory, shows he was more than just a follower of Dio. And if you look closely, he has more to him than meets the eye. Enrico Pucci is a priest who questioned the human experience, like why there has to be both happiness and misfortune, or why fate chose him instead of his brother. A very normal thought process for a person to have, especially for a man of the cloth. Until that thought was twisted the day he met Dio. When Dio asked him if he believes there was a reason he tripped over him, but then tells him that fate is like gravity and is in search of more fateful encounters like this one. Through the flashbacks we see through his relationship with Dio, though it's portrayed as friendship, it seems more like Pucci was a follower, to the point of glazing him, calling him a king of kings, and only wished to see his rise and the achievement of his heaven. And because of the things that happened in his past life, like the death of his sister, Pucci may not have said it out loud or even realized it, but Pucci was frightened of the future that comes from the choices he takes or has to, as it was because of his choices that led to his sister dying. This is part of the meaning behind the meeting between him and Dio. The question of gravity, about the pull of fate. After hearing a confessional about the truth of his brother, his actual living brother, who was also dating his sister, his and theirs, and after the tragedy of their family, he sought out Dio to get more answers. Pucci might have felt better believing that the events of the tragedy was fated to happen, no matter what choice he made, rather than something that did happen because of his choice. The irony is, Pucci sought Dio out like a believer sought God. As one quote that reflects a few similar passages, through God's grace and faith in him, you will find the path to heaven. Which is made even more ironic because Dio means God in Italy, where Dio met Pucci. But Pucci was trying to do it through Dio as Dio talks about the way to heaven, or what heaven would be like for every living being. So Pucci saw Dio as God, saying that he loves him as he loves God. Just like when Dio healed his feet, just like the story of when Jesus healed the lame. But the devil can perform miracles too. But as a priest, this twisted and contradictory relationship with Dio is part of what makes Pucci such an interesting character. The more you look into it, as he conflates Dio with God even after Dio's death, he still wasn't his own person yet, as he was still eating off Dio's plate. It wasn't until the death of Dio, the death of his God, that finally Pucci takes the main role of his life again. And he was only taking the role he believes Dio should have fulfilled and believes it's his duty to finish it, which has to be even more ironic, because it's when Pucci finally decides to take a proactive role in his own life as he starts the stairway to heaven, or at least his heaven, if you can call it that. His goal, made in heaven, speeds up time so fast that the universe ultimately ends and restarts, creating a new cycle, but this time where every living being knows their future like deja vu. Pucci's version of heaven is a perversion of the true heaven Pucci as a clergyman should have been seeking and guiding other humans towards. But it's also a reflection of Pucci's contradictory nature and his real desires. His heaven would eventually erase free will and just make people submit to their fates. But it's through free will would things have real meaning, because the power of belief itself is a powerful tool, as it's a power of imagination, and imagination is humanity's greatest gifts and power. Because if we can imagine it, we can create it. And also reflecting his past with the actions he took. Pucci never seemed the type to pioneer his own life. Even his decision to be a priest was just because his grandparents were, and seemed like an obvious choice to him, which shows by how easily he's influenced. This plan is a reflection of Pucci's entire character, like the tragedy of his brother and sister that he believes was fated to happen, the tragedy that he never recognized to be his fault, or even take steps to make amends to his brother and sister, but instead made his brother his prisoner, which almost mirrors Made in Heaven, being a prisoner of the future. Even his stand, White Snake, is a mirror to Father Pucci. While some might say its design is a reference to R. Kelly, but what I see is its entire design is contradictory to Pucci's own drip, but also reveals his inner self, as it holds a fake crown designed from an executioner hood, contrasting with Pucci being a priest, someone to overcome worldly desires and inner urges. Its body covered in symbols for DNA, as control over DNA is the key to godhood, as it mirrors the stand's ability to control people's memories through discs. And these discs don't just control memories. To an extent, they can even control a living being, which mirrors the DNA symbols on his bodies. And even in its name, White Snake, symbolic for the snake that tempted Eve, as White Snake has the ability to take and give memories or knowledge like the fruit. It shows this by creating Foo Fighters, a creation of his making by combining memories and a stand to make a new being, as stands are a person's inner spirit. But Foo Fighter was a contradiction and the answer against Pucci's entire goal. Memories are precious. They are what makes a person. They are the proof that they lived. Even on their death, they are proud of the life they lived because they lived it. All these reveals a lot about Enrico Pucci's character, and that's just from one of his stands, as he has two more, Sea Moon and Made in Heaven, and both of them are important in Pucci's desires. Sea Moon controls area of gravity around Pucci, making him the focus point for wherever he is, gravity would flow in the opposite. Like the connection between fate and gravity, either Pucci wanted to control it and not let it control him, or wanted to be unaffected by the pull of gravity, and that any decisions he made were entirely his own. The irony in this is how he wants to control gravity but also be unaffected by it. And then finally, Made in Heaven, the final lap, the final frontier, the stand he needs to achieve heaven. Made in Heaven's purpose was basically speeding up time so fast that a new universe is born, and give every living being deja vu of events of their entire life from old universe. To know what you're gonna do before you even do it, or as you're doing it, erases free will, or the illusion of it, or taking away responsibility from making decisions, which can make sense why Pucci would see this as heaven. If it's because it would relieve some of the pain and grief off his shoulders by taking away the responsibility from the decisions he took that day that caused the death of his sister, or the relief to believe that his decision was just something that was meant to happen and he had no control over it, which go back to how it all started. Just like this heaven he believes in is the same he believes in the decision he made to make his brother and sister happy in the end. He took that decision into his own hands. He controlled their fate. It was selfish and arrogant to believe to know what's best for others, but doesn't think the decisions were for himself. Even in his last moments, his journey started because of his brother and ended because of it. Still believing that all the things he did and sacrificed for his goal was for the benefit of others shows how empty a person Pucci was. Theo said he was a man with no desire, and that's not always a good thing depending on how you look at it. It's like Pucci could see a big picture but never himself in that picture. It makes you wonder if Pucci was more insane than Diavolo, as it's always the quiet one. Though probably like Anno, creator of Evangelion, all of these are just coincidences and it's just something Araki pulled in to make look cool.